hello, Facebook, and happy 103rd birthday to Russ Freeburg. I'm going to let everybody in.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to Russell Freeburg.
Can you see your own picture?
This is the
Yeah,
Veterans
okay.
Breakfast Club, and we are celebrating Russell's 103rd birthday here tonight on this special program. I'm Todd DiPastino. This is the Veterans Breakfast Club, and to help us celebrate, we have two other World War II veterans with us, Colonel Joe Peterburs, signing in from California, and Bob Miller from Maine. Good to see you both. And we also have Glenn Flickinger, our World War II Greatest Generation Live host, and the great Scott Masters. Thank you both for being here to celebrate Russell's birthday.
One of these days I'm going to get, the great in front or after my name, Todd, but I know I can work on that.
I do
So
leave
I gotta
that
work
out
on
when I describe you, don't I?
Yeah, the other day, everybody else was great, but I was just plain old Glenn. But that's okay, because
You're very good, Glenn. You're very good.
The very good Glenn Flickinger. Thank you. Yeah, thank you all for being on tonight. Yeah, I am Glenn Flickinger. I have the great honor of hosting this VBC Zoom, normally on Thursday nights, but special night tonight for Russ on Wednesday night, Greatest Generation Live, where we honor our World War II veterans. We've been very, very fortunate to have many World War II veterans on in the past 4 or 5 years, and Todd before that for a dozen years. So we're really, really honored to have the 3 veterans on tonight. And Todd, keep a lookout for George Rubin, if you would, in the gallery,
Okay.
just in case he pops in. I had invited him, but hadn't heard from him. George, another World War II veteran who probably now is 101, as I recall, B-17 waist gunner. But yeah, it's a great honor to have you on, Russ. We've been really thrilled to get to know you over the past, I'd say, 2 or 3 years now, since Scott Masters. Scott introduced us to you 2 or 3 years ago. He had interviewed you, his students had interviewed you, and he made us aware of you. And we then had you on a program a couple years ago where we walked through your World War II experience and some of your life afterwards as well, which is pretty darn interesting as well.
Why is my picture hidden?
Is that Bob?
Because you're the
That
oh,
is
hi,
Bob.
I'm sorry. I didn't know I could be heard.
Yeah, no problem, Bob. It's good to see you and good to hear you.
So let's before I turn this over to Scott and his students to walk us through Russ's experience in World War II and some of his other life, let's recognize the 2 other veterans, World War II veterans we have. They're both unmuted. Let me start with you, Bob, since we just had a little voice from you. Bob Miller, thank you for being on tonight.
Well, he has to unmute himself again.
Oh, now we have to unmute him. Okay. Did you ask already, Todd?
Yes.
Okay. 1 second, Bob. Unmute, Bob. Nope, not going to happen. Oh,
There it is.
Okay. Is
There.
that better?
That's better.
Okay.
Bob, how old are you? How old are you,
I
Bob?
was born in 1923, and I was, in fact, I was born on December 7th, which is when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. That was interesting. I joined the Navy at age 17.
So we've got another 103rd birthday coming up on Pearl Harbor Day of this year.
Hopefully, if I make it.
No doubt, no doubt. And Bob, we're not going to go into your story in depth, but you're a Navy veteran, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. I was in the Navy. In fact, when I was 13, I joined the Junior Naval Reserve. And I think that was the best thing I could have done at that time, because when I went into the Navy at age 17. But I knew a lot more than all the other guys combined.
Yeah, because you knew your way around the ship. Most of the guys that joined the Navy basically didn't even know how to swim, right? Because they came from,
Oh, that's true. Yeah, and of course we were before the war. We were dropping 300-pound depth charges on German U-boats, and we weren't even at war with them yet.
yeah, yeah. The war in the Atlantic started well before December 7th, 1941, with casualties, significant casualties.
Oh yes.
So, Bob, again, thank you so much for being on. Maybe Todd or Scott, if you have the link to whatever interviews that have been done with Bob, you could throw it in the chat. Okay, great.
Absolutely.
So those of you that know how to use the chat, if you look in the chat, you can link to interviews that have been done with Bob Miller, and you can learn more of his story. And then we also have, and would like to recognize before we go any further, Joe Peterburs. Joe, as always, what a great pleasure.
Well, my pleasure. I enjoy these sessions. Yeah,
Always
great.
fun to have you on, Joe. I can't remember how we originally got connected with Joe. I can't remember. I think it might have been, the first interview I ever did for the VBC of a World War II veteran was Bud Anderson, who I know
Oh,
you
yeah.
knew quite well. That was my first program. I said, Bud, let's have an interview for an hour and 15 minutes. And 2 hours and 15 minutes later, I said, Bud, and he was 99 at the time. I said, Bud, we got to stop. I'm tired. I can't go on anymore, Bud. Let me rest.
Great band. He was a great band.
Yeah. P-51 pilot, triple ace, one of the great P-51 pilots, right, Joe? I think it might have been through that interview that we somehow became aware of you all those years ago. And we've had Joe on to tell his story multiple times. And Joe was just out in California, Todd, for the Story Fest. You want to
Yeah, we had a
something about that?
we had a wonderful 3-day event in Santa Monica called Story Fest, where we had veterans of all eras and ages and branches of service sharing their stories with a lot of different activities and a field trip to the USS Iowa. And Joe was there for the whole thing with his wonderful granddaughter Sabrina, who Joe shared his story the first morning at our breakfast, but he also was there to kind of take in and listen to the other stories of the other veterans and kind of comment on them and interact with our guests. And it was a highlight, I think, for everybody who was there. And it's funny, we were all coming back, back to Pittsburgh from Santa Monica, and it was like every one of us had our Joe Peterburs story, our favorite Joe Peterburs moment with him and talking with him. And I had mine, but it was interesting to hear others also. So thank you, Joe, for really making what was a great event absolutely unforgettable. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's
And
very
again,
good. Thank you.
we'll throw links to Joe's interviews with us in the chat. You can go to our website, veteransbreakfastclub.org, and look on the live stream archive. You can find him as well. I have to thank Joe for giving me such an entertaining story of his to retell. Joe, luckily you haven't charged me any royalties yet because I owe you a lot of money. Anytime I go to a library or historical association to present on something, no matter what the topic, I usually start with a couple of stories about various World War II veterans I've known and interviewed. And one of them is always Joe. And as I tell his story, and I see the jaws slowly begin to drop to the point where eventually they're on the table or under the table when we get to the post-World War II story, Joe. So it's a fascinating story, Joe, and everybody on this call should look it up on our website. We actually probably have 3 or 4 interviews with Joe. So listen, let's get to the main event and have this birthday party, such as it is for Russ Freeburg. Russell, again, such a pleasure to have you. I'm going to turn it over to Scott Masters. We first got to know Russell through Scott Masters. Scott is the master of World War II interviews, finding World War II veterans, interviewing them. And he and his students at Crestwood are just fantastic in doing this. and we've shared an awful lot with them over the years. So, Scott, it is your program with the students.
Thank you very much, Glenn. That's a lot of pressure, so I'll do my best. The good thing for me is I don't have to do too much talking tonight. You guys can see there are a lot of younger than usual people in the audience tonight, and those would be my students, and they're the ones who are actually going to do the tribute to Russell tonight. So, Russell, these are some of the very students that you would have had the chance to speak to when we did that Zoom interview last November. So I'm going to go into share screen. Todd, I'm able to do all that now? All right, perfect. So we put together a presentation that we are going to share. And first, I have got to ask the students to unmute. So I am going to do that for the four of them who are going to be involved in this. And we will go through what's going to be a really rousing presentation. And I did want to thank Russell's son John for sharing some information, some photographs and things like that. So this is about a lot more than Russell's war experience. You'll definitely get that. So let me do the share screen here. And I will share sound and optimize video, and hopefully all is going to be good here. So I wanted to begin with, there we are, a nice picture of Russell and a tribute here. This is a picture of the students and I when we did the Zoom with Russell last year. Russell got all dressed up for us and wore a blazer. Bob was there wearing his World War II veteran hat, and you recognize a number of people from the Veterans Breakfast Club who pretty routinely join us for those things. So I invited a few students along with me tonight. These are mostly students in my grade 11 and 12 classes. Some of these students, believe it or not, have interviewed as many as 50 World War II veterans and Holocaust survivors. This program is something that we, really take to heart at Crestwood. The students are going to host most of the program tonight, that is. And we wanted to choose a program that we thought Russell would be very familiar with. So a short clip in just a moment.
This is Your Life, an American television tradition. And now here he is, Mr. This Is Your Life himself, Ralph Edwards.
Now, Glenn and I are going to have to take on the role of Ralph Edwards tonight, and the students are going to take that on as well. I should begin by pointing out that I happen to be too young to remember This Is Your Life. It was just a little bit before my time, but Glenn told me all about it. So we are covered as far as that's concerned. And I wanted to begin by handing the microphone over to Cheney. And Cheney, take it away.
Right. Good evening, everybody. Russell Freeburg was born March 4th, 1923 in Galesburg, Illinois, in the western part of the state. Galesburg would have looked like this in those days, and Russell would have looked like this. Well, I think it's coming up. Yep, that's him right there. That picture is right around 100 years old. He grew up in that railroad town against the backdrop of the Great Depression, graduating from high school in 1941. Just a few months later, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, bringing the U.S. into the war. This is where the soldier part of Russell's story begins. He remembers that he and the others saw the clouds of war forming. He was attending Knox College by that time, and he had enrolled in the ROTC. During his time at Knox, he met Sally Woodford of Chicago, whom he later married.
And Charlie, go ahead. Oh, let me stop the share for a moment. Did we lose Charlie? Oh, Charlie, I got to ask you to unmute. Okay, there we are.
Sorry.
That's okay. Go right ahead. Go right ahead. Right ahead.
In February of 1942, Russell enlisted in the Army Enlisted Reserve Corps, from which he would be called to duty in June of 1943. He went through basic training at this time, but was returned to university until March of 1944, when he was assigned to the 49th Armored Infantry Battalion of the 8th Armored Division. They headed to England on the HMS Samara, and once they were stationed in the Salisbury Plain. Russell was a staff sergeant and a squad leader at this time, as he was when they were shipped over to France. The Battle of the Bulge was underway by this time, so they crossed France and were stationed on the Metz front.
As his unit moved towards the front at night, Russell said that reality set in when a hospital train passed in the opposite direction, carrying wounded men away from the fighting. Its cars were marked with red crosses with the curtains drawn. That kind of sent a shiver through me, he said. I knew I was going to be in harm's way very shortly. After the Bulge wound down, they were transferred from the 3rd to the 9th Army and moved to the northern front and were stationed in southern Holland. The crossing of the Rhine and Ruhr rivers followed in short order as Russell and the rest of the 9th moved into Germany. Russell served as an armored infantryman, riding in half-tracks but fighting largely on foot. The half-track offered mobility and a little bit of comfort, but safety was never guaranteed. Patrols were often under fire, and German mortar crews routinely zeroed in on road junctions. They became involved in the Battle of the Ruhr Pocket and encountered significant German resistance in a number of locales. Here, Russell and a friend are standing by their vehicle. This is an AI-enhanced picture by Eric Montgomery. The same photo is seen in a mock-up of Yank magazine.
Never knew that.
Yeah, well, that's from Eric, and I think we got to go back to Cheney, and she might have put herself on mute. There we are. So, students, just leave yourselves unmuted. Just be quiet when it's not your turn, and we'll keep going.
Got it. Russell was awarded the Bronze Star Medal for advancing alone to capture a German anti-aircraft gun and its crew. Benjamin Mack Jackson of the World War II Veterans History Project also visited with Russell earlier this year, and he shared some of his video and photographs with us, and they can be seen in this clip where Russell remembers one of his more compelling moments from the war.
And as it happens, Ben is here this evening. So I thought, Todd, I would invite Ben to say a little bit about his own interview with Russell. I was very fortunate to meet Ben when he was up in Toronto, and he's down in Florida, and he had a great visit with Russell not too long ago also. So Ben, do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about your meeting with Russell and the video that we're about to see?
Of course. Russ, first of all, very happy birthday. It's great to see you here this evening. I've had the privilege to visit with Russ a few times now, ever since my first interview with him last year, thanks to Scott's introduction. And the clip you're about to see tonight is from one of those interviews that I did with him recently. And like I said, Russ, it's such an honor to have you with us here tonight and a pleasure to call you a friend.
Thank you, Ben. Let me go ahead and play that video. It's just about 3 minutes long or so, and it gives a great insight into some of Russell's stories.
And in World War II, I was in the 8th Armored Division in the European theater. After we took part in the encirclement of the Ruhr, we turned east again, and at a town, Newhouse, we had cleared out the town, and for some reason, I wasn't with my company. I'd gone back for some reason and went back up and into a house, and I heard a soldier crying out in the field. And when I got in the house, there was a medic there, and I said, "Why haven't you gone out to get him?" He said, "I won't go." I said, "What do you mean you won't go?" He said, "I won't go. I'm not going out there." And well, the Germans had pulled back to a tree line, and often as they did, they fired from the tree line for a while. And they had forced the guys that were crossing the field into the houses there. So I traded helmets with him and put on the medic helmet with the big red cross and the white and ran out into the field and lay down beside him. And I asked who it was before I left, and they said they thought it was Bob Williams. And so I said, Bob, what's wrong? And he says, he said, I have no feeling in my legs. He said, I'm paralyzed from the waist down. And I told him, I said, well, you're just a dead weight. I can't carry you. I'm going to have to drag you across back to the house, which I did. And we called up an ambulance. And that's the last I saw of him. But after the war was over and we were back with the Third Army in Czechoslovakia, I heard that he had gotten all the way back to an army hospital in Nebraska, his home state, and he had died there.
Mm.
I made the calculation that the Germans had left the line there. And I ran as fast as I could. And when I got there, I tried to position myself behind him so his body was first. And they didn't fire. If they were there, they didn't fire. They honored the helmet that was worn by a medic. I don't know. But, well, you couldn't leave him there, for God's sakes. I often wondered if I should have put the medic in for a court-martial, but I just let it go.
All the while, they continued to move east, and at war's end, Russ was in Czechoslovakia, not too far from the Russian lines. At dusk on VE Day, he noticed windows left uncovered and curtains moving in the breeze, instinctively thinking of blackout rules. And then I realized the war was over, he said. Here he and a friend smile, possibly as they heard the news.
The move back to the West began soon after, as the men made their way back through Germany to the cigarette camps in France, and then onto the ships that would take them home. Home for Russ meant a few army camps at first, to be followed by his discharge in February of 1946. That ended an important part of Russell's life, his time as a soldier, which really only makes up 4 of his 103 years. Post-war, Russell took advantage of the GI Bill benefits and transferred and completed his studies at Washington University in St. Louis, earning a bachelor's degree. During this time, Russell married and began his journalism career, first as a reporter at the City News Bureau of Chicago. For the next quarter of a century, he had a front-row seat to earth-shattering shifts in media power as the newspaper industry battled for survival against the rise of television and the start of the digital age.
Russell joined the Chicago Tribune in 1950 and stayed there for the next 7 years, followed by a 1958 move to Washington, D.C. to cover the Justice Department and the White House. He was named the executive director of the Tribune's Washington Bureau in 1966, and he rounded out his career by serving as the Tribune's managing editor for a year. According to Grokopedia, not a source I'd usually use, his time with the Tribune emphasized rigorous fact-checking and resistance to sensationalism, kind of the opposite world from the one I live in now. Russell also appeared on a certain TV news show a few times in this period.
This is Ned Brooks inviting you to Meet the Press.
Meet the Press, America's press conference of the air, and winner of every major award in its field, is a public affairs presentation of NBC News.
And you can see him on the panelist table here, third from the front. We tried to find him on YouTube and went through the Meet the Press archives, but were unable to find a clip of him on the show.
Later, Russell co-authored Oil and War with Robert Goralski of NBC News, which was published in 1987. He also created a blog called Inside the Front Page, where he has shared his thoughts on present-day journalism. Russell's life story is fascinating, covering the Depression and the war and the post-war boom and dawn of the TV age. We got to know him because he was once a soldier, but that is just part of his life. He went on to be a husband, a father, a reporter, and so much more, and we are happy to see that he is so active past the century mark. We thank his son John for sending in some of these recent photos. We are lucky to have met him and are very pleased to wish him a happy birthday.
Now, Russell, I had one question for you based on something we saw in one of the photos. I was wondering if you could tell us about that folded $1 bill in that one picture.
Well, for some reason, I carried a $1 bill all through my military service, and it was sort of a good luck charm, I guess. And I still have it, as you can see there. It
Thank
worked.
you. It definitely worked. Thank you for that, Russell. I wanted to ask that question, but I figured it would be better coming from one of the students. And as you guys can see, I'm incredibly lucky to have this group of kids. I've known some of them for 2 and 3 years, and they're absolutely fantastic. So I thank them for giving up a little bit of time on a Wednesday night, and they're going to stick around. And Russell, they may ask you a few more questions. We'll see what comes to mind.
Well, we're going to say, Scott, that dollar wouldn't buy much today. It bought a lot more when I folded it and put it in the pocket of my uniform.
Perfect. So Glenn and Todd, back to you. The Crestwood portion is complete.
Excellent. Just a very, very nice job by the students, and at your direction, I'm sure, Scott. It's really heartening to see young people interested in history like this, particularly military history, World War II history, which oftentimes just gets looked over. So it really, really feels good to see all these young people on the program tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Before we go any further, I noticed that George Rubin joined us about 5-10 minutes ago. Muted you, George. Hi, George.
Good to be with you. Our dinner schedule here at our retirement place makes it hard to get on by 7, but I'm glad to be with you.
Thank you for joining us, George. Thank you. For those of you who maybe don't know George, we have known George for a couple of years now. We interviewed him way back 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, and then he occasionally comes on some of our programs. Just a little bit of background on George. George, first of all, George, how old are you now?
I'll be 101 in May. I'm just a kid with Freeburg here at 103. I'm the young one. I'm only 100.
George, when you get older, we'll give you a special night too. But George, again, we can put a link to his programs in our chat. George was a B-17 waist gunner in 1944, early 1945. I can't remember the precise date. George's plane was shot down. And George was captured along with the rest of his crew. The plane actually crash landed, which was different than most situations where most of the time the men bailed out and were captured. And George was captured, became a POW, and therein lies another fantastic stories, which George, you missed it earlier. I thank Joe Peterburs for allowing me to tell his story when I go out and lecture to history societies and libraries and so forth. I often tell your story, which again is another jaw-dropping story as to how you survived. So we won't go into it tonight, George, but thank you so very much for being on.
Good to be with you. Good to be with you.
Okay, great. Okay, well, again, thank you, Scott, and students all for that summary of Russell's background. Todd, why don't we just throw it open to questions from the audience at this point?
Yeah, questions or birthday wishes. If anybody wants to give Russell a special birthday wish. You could raise your hand, or you could put your hand in front of the camera. You could raise your electronic hand. However if you want to say something, let us know.
Any questions you'd like to ask of George in his
Here we go.
experience?
Jennifer Daly. Could you unmute, Jennifer? Could you unmute yourself, Jennifer?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to raise. I was just raising it. No,
Oh,
I
yes.
do not have a question right
Okay.
now.
Okay. I do see Jennifer Daly had her hand up. Could you unmute, Jennifer? I asked you to. You'll see it on the screen. There you
Can you
go.
hear me now?
Yep, there you go.
It's not a question. If Russ has not looked at his email today, I would like him to, because I sent him an email card for his birthday.
Hi, Jennifer.
And it's good to see you, Russ, and I'm looking forward to seeing you ring that bell this summer.
She means the church bell at
Right.
the Congregational Summer Assembly. I've rung the bell for Holly, how many years? 20 years? Yeah. 20 years. 20 years.
Well, we had a picture of that John sent. I didn't quite know the background to it. Now we know it. Thank you.
Chase Polis, how are you?
Good. I was just curious, was armored infantry / army your first choice? Was it a first choice over Navy or Army Air Force?
That's a good question. Did you choose armored infantry, or was it chosen for you, Russ?
That was thrust upon me.
Okay.
And after basic training, they sent us back to school, and they sent a contingent of several thousand, I suppose, to the University of Illinois, and I was one of them.
And I might just interpose here. I don't know if we could throw that picture back up of the half track, Scott, but armored infantry was a new concept to the U.S. Army in armored divisions in World War II, and always been fascinated by the weapons and the transportation of World War II. And a half track was a brand new concept. I know if Todd, I know you're the master of finding pictures. If you could throw a picture of a World War II half track up, because when we originally interviewed Scott, or I'm sorry, Russell, I asked him what was life like in a half track. How many people were in it? What was your job in the half track, Russell?
Well, I was squad leader. There were 10 of us. In front was the driver, and the assistant driver sat in the middle, and I was in the turret with the 50 caliber machine gun. And the rest of them sat in the back. The half track was a godsend over just in the being in the pure infantry.
There we go.
It was sort of a home for us. We could keep stuff in the half track. We picked up a couple of German radios that we had, and we had to have two because we never knew what current a town would have, either direct or alternate current. So that's why we had two radios, and we would listen to the music sometimes on the radio, on the German radios.
So this version has two machine guns. Yours had one up front, like the one pictured here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's a posed picture.
Yeah, and as the war went on, they came out with dozens of different versions of half tracks with different kinds of weapons on it. The basic version was the one you described with the 50 cal up front, and the back end. This really is you could think of this as the grandfather of the current fighting vehicles, like the Bradley fighting vehicle and others. You could also think of it as the grandfather of the Winnebago recreational vehicle, I suppose.
Can I ask you, Russ? You said you had a radio, German radio, with you. Did you ever listen to Axis Sally?
I don't recall Axis Sally listening to her. There was Aren't I Mary, which was closer to us, of course.
Aren't I Mary?
And we listened to her once in a while at night when we'd stop for the day. One great thing about the half track was the heat from the engine. During the winter, when it was cold as hell, when we would stop for some reason, the fellows in the back would run around and climb on the engine and warm up. And you could also use the engine for sea rations. You punch a little hole in it and put the can in, and it would heat it up. So there were advantages to being in the armored infantry.
Did you make fun of those guys who had to walk all the time, Russ?
No.
At your peril.
I would never make fun of them.
Well, I meant in a friendly sort of way.
Yeah. No. They had their 2.5-ton trucks that they rode in as close as they could get to the front on any given day. In Newhouse, we changed we're given new assignments, and the 35th Infantry Division marched through us. That was rather interesting. They didn't say much to us. They were just walking along.
I want to ask Tate. Tate, do you have something to say or ask?
Yeah. Hi, Russell. I wanted to know, how do you feel about the sweeping changes to media that have occurred in the past few decades of your life?
Well, the newspaper is almost defunct. When I joined the Tribune, it had a circulation of 1,022,000. I know that because they had a box on the front page every day boasting about it. When I was managing editor, we were down to 750,000 circulation. So television was eating into us year after year. There were some print journalists that didn't take kindly to television, and every once in a while, when they had television cameras in the back of a room during an interview, they would get up and make noises and sounds and try to destroy the tape. Maybe I shouldn't tell that story. But it was a emotionally difficult for television to become stronger and stronger when you were a print journalist. But television depended a lot still on the printed page in preparing their newscasts. They would look at say in Chicago or New York, they would take the New York Times morning edition, or in Chicago, take the Tribune morning edition, and build through the day for their evening newscast from the newspapers.
Warren.
Maybe they still do. I don't know. But the technology has really changed, and social media has almost usurped media in day-to-day lives of people. I'm not a social media fan. I hardly ever watch. I've never watched it, really. I'm still an old print journalist and read the Wall Street Journal every morning. I do watch CBS News, though. I do have that on my computer.
Walter Crowdis.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, Russ, happy birthday. Looking forward to seeing you in Michigan this summer. I thought it might be great if you would share the story of how you came to be decorated with the Bronze Star. I vaguely recall it had something to do with a German anti-aircraft gun, but I don't remember all the details. I think people might be interested to hear that.
Thank you, Walter.
Well, we were deep into central Germany. It was in April, early April. I think it was the day that President Roosevelt died. And I remember a runner coming through and telling us that he had died. Well, we pushed through and left the ACAC unit there. And then late afternoon, we'd stop for the day. And I thought, we ought to go out and get that and bring them in. And so I walked out. It was at dusk, and I walked out several hundred yards and then crawled up to them and watched them for a while. And they had their small arms stacked. So I knew that I had to draw on them. And so I just stood up and, said, "Hunder ho," which was up with your arms. And they really didn't resist in any way. They didn't go for their guns. They knew that I had the drop on them. And they had a horse and wagon, and they asked if they could ride in on the horse and on the wagon. And I said that was okay. And that's what they did. They rode in and went through our lines and we were herded on back. I never saw them again. Never heard of anything about them after that. But that's what happened. We were so far east that I always assumed that they were the outer perimeter line of ACAC guns protecting Berlin. They would be the first ones that would fire on the American bombers going toward Berlin. And that's why they were so far back. So that's the story of the ACAC capture, I would say. There were 6 men or so in the unit. And the horse and wagon, I don't know how many people realize that the German army as a whole had some elements of World War I in them. And that was their horse. They had over 2.5 million horses pulling their artillery and their kitchen units. And we often ran across big piles of hay that had been stacked for these horses. And I just wondered how many men daily the Germans used to just keep these horses in hay. It's in Oil and War. I tell a story that when they with the V1, which was their first rocket, when it was pulled to the Normandy coast in wagons covered with a gray canvas, and they were moving them forward after D-Day, and they were stopping the armored divisions coming down from the north to join the fight on the beaches, and the wagons were given priority to take these rockets to the sites along the Normandy coast. And I saw one after the war. It was kind of like a swimming pool with one end open and on a slant. And they would put some rocket in there and it would shoot off toward England. Hitler obviously preferred the rockets. The Germans had jet aircraft, fighter planes, jet fighter plane. And one morning when we were encircling the Ruhr pocket, we were buttoned up and waiting to the signal to start moving. And all of a sudden there was a swish, and our Ralph Dreisbach, our driver, said, "What the hell was that?" And I was up in the turret, and I could see, and it was a jet airplane, and that thing was moving at a tremendous speed. And he came in low, and then he circled and went up high, and then he came in again. He was obviously doing reconnaissance. He had no intention of firing on us, and I was so awed by it that I didn't fire at him. I couldn't hit him anyway. He was traveling so fast. After the war, for Oil and War, I talked to one of the German aces, Adolf Galland, and he said that the fighters, they didn't have a good steel for the engines, and that's was a deterrent in the development of the fighter for Germany.
So, Russell, did I hear you right? You interviewed Adolf Galland?
Yeah, we talked to him. He was in the Washington area.
Yeah.
Giving a lecture, and Bob Gorowski and I went to the lecture and then talked to him afterwards. Yeah.
Now, Joe Peterburs, did you meet Adolf Galland too after the war?
No, I did not. No.
Okay.
Joe shot down a Me-262 German jet plane, one of the very few ever to shoot down.
Yeah, I would think so. They were moving pretty fast. You have to give your gun a lot of lead time.
Well, Joe, if you go to our interview with Joe, he has a great description of him shooting down that 262, which happened to be piloted by one of the primary aces of the German Luftwaffe. I'm sorry, Joe, I've forgotten his name.
Walter Schuck.
Walter Schuck.
Oberleutnant Walter Schuck. He had 206 aerial victories confirmed.
Again, part of Joe's fantastic story, which is only about halfway through his story.
And I love that Joe and Walter became friends after the war.
Yeah. Russell, if I could just take a second. So I heard you telling the story of the anti-aircraft gun and you being sort of on the outer ring of the anti-aircraft defenses around Berlin, right? So that puts you at the spear of the Ninth Army in April or so of 1945, late March, early April of 1945. Just put it into historical context, which I'm sure you know, Russell, but I want the rest of our audience to appreciate where you were. You were at the very tip of the spear of the Ninth Army, led by General Walter Simpson. And it was at about that time that Eisenhower said, stop to the Ninth Army and Simpson, don't go any further towards Berlin. We're going to let the Russians take Berlin. And that's when the Ninth Army and your unit backed off a little bit and let the Russians do their thing. A very historical and interesting moment in World War II that led to quite a bit of controversy and discussion as to whether that was appropriate for the U.S., for the military, for Eisenhower to make that decision. But it's a fascinating part of the war. And you were there.
Well, yes, I was there. And one of the reasons they stopped us was that we were close to the Elbe River, which was going to be the dividing line between the Russians and the Americans. And they wanted to move through us, and for the one or two of the divisions that had landed in Normandy, and they wanted them to have the honor of beating the Russians, which at that time was an honor. But later, that honor sort of deteriorated.
Well, that honor by the Russian army cost them 300,000 lives.
Yeah.
Eisenhower's quote was, I'm not going to waste our men on taking that city. I'm not going to have our officers write those letters to those parents to take that city. So it's a fascinating point in World War II history.
Scott.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Mr. Freeburg. It's your friend Scott Gosnell over here in Houston. Happy birthday.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, good to see you. It warms my heart not just to be able to spend time with you here virtually, but also seeing all these young folks interested in you and your history. Because, of course, that's how I got to know you some 20 odd years ago as a teenager when Cammy Royal sent me knocking on your cottage door to talk to a real life World War II veteran. So it's just so cool to see this continue. One comment, the Bronze Star story is such a great one. I think maybe in an act of humility, you left out an interesting point. You can correct me if I'm wrong. My recollection of the story is that you recruited a fellow soldier to go along with you, and he backed out before you got to the German position, and you went ahead and did it on your own. Is that right?
Yeah, Jack Christian came with me, and he stopped and covered me as I went forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, bit of a through line there from the when you put on the medic's helmet and went it alone to that moment. So anyway, happy birthday. Can't wait to see you this summer. All the best.
Thank you. Yeah, Jack Christian was my best friend during the war and after the war. We always kept up our friendship, visited each other.
When did he die?
He died in his 80s, so he's been gone a long time.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Oh, I'm sorry. I muted Kate. You're going to have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hi, Russell. I just had another question. What was the coolest thing you ever did in the Army?
Coolest thing you ever did in the Army, Russell?
Say that again, though.
Coolest. Coolest.
What was
The
the coolest
coolest
thing you ever
thing?
did?
I don't know if I have an answer to that question. Uh, it was cool after the war in Czechoslovakia, for reasons unknown to me. Our company was chosen as an honor guard for General Patton when he flew in to talk to the troops. And our supply sergeant, our supply officer, somehow got a hold of a couple of barrels of shellac, and we shellacked our, Patton was spit and polish. And so we shellacked all our vehicles and shellacked our helmet liners. So they just sparkled. And he flew in on his Piper Cub, and it was a beautiful day. We were east of Pilsen, and it was a beautiful day. The sky was absolutely Carolina blue. And he came in and landed, and he came over and started walking through the company ranks. And he would stop and talk to the soldiers, especially those wearing the Purple Heart. And sometimes when a senior officer inspected a troop like that, he would walk as fast as he could and get it over as fast as he could. But Patton just moseyed along and talked to the soldiers. As I said, he talked to the Purple Heart recipients the most. That General Patton did not have the voice of Scott, who played him in Patton. I was surprised when he started to talk. He had a rather high-pitched voice, and that I found very interesting. So that was the shellacking the vehicles and our helmet liners, so they just sparkled in the sun. That was the coolest thing we have ever done in the Army.
Love it.
Hey,
Chase,
let me, Todd, if I could, let me share the screen for a moment. Oh, I see a couple other hands have gone up, but let me do this. One of our most loyal BBC members is Barb Smith, who could not be on the program tonight. And she sent in this picture, which I thought was pretty interesting. All right. 100 plus 3, that's 103. And that's her way of sending you happy birthday, because she couldn't be here tonight. And it's a great way. I love it. I happen to know that you cannot find birthday cards that are written that say anything more than 100, because my mom in April will be 106.
Wow.
Wow.
So this gives me an idea as to how to come up with a birthday card for her. I'll share this, if you don't mind, a little personal news. My youngest granddaughter was born about a month ago by my older son, and they named their granddaughter after my 105-year-old mom, Virginia.
Oh, how wonderful.
And this Saturday, we're going to take Virginia Jr. to go see Virginia Senior at the nursing home. So ought to be pretty special.
Oh, that's so special.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So others, we had some hands up.
Yeah, Chase was on. Chase, I don't know if you dropped off or
No, I was just.
There you are. Okay.
Russ, during your time in the Ruhr pocket, did you have any interesting interactions with the German enemy on the other side? And do you recall any moments running in with the Volkssturm or any of the paramilitary forces?
The Hitler Youth.
I don't remember distinguishing the German soldier, whether he was Hitler Youth or an older soldier who had been around a long time. some of them came back from the Russian front, and they threw them into the line after D-Day. And does that answer the question? I had a hard time hearing the question.
Yeah, that answers the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about, is it Charlene? I can't read the name for sure. What is the name?
That's Cheney.
Cheney.
Yeah.
Cheney.
Hello, Russell again. My question is, as a soldier turned journalist, what was it like for you when you reported on Vietnam?
Good question.
Well, on Vietnam, first of all, covering the White House and JFK, I always thought that John Kennedy would going to pull us out of Vietnam after the election. And before he was assassinated, so that never happened. But I was pretty much convinced that he was going to, he didn't like the corruption of the leaders of South Vietnam for one reason. And I covered the first big demonstration in Washington, and the night before went out and walked among them. Clouds of marijuana smoke. But the next day, the demonstration with all their flags and all the color was I hate to use the word beautiful, but it was a colorful sight, a colorful sight. And the government somehow had gotten hold of a lot of old buses, and they lined the Treasury building and the White House with these buses, which would have made it harder for the demonstrators to get into the buildings or climb the White House fence. So they were prepared for this demonstration.
Sydney.
Hi, Russ. Happy birthday. My question is as a journalist, was there ever a news story that really stuck with you?
Well, there were through the years there were a lot of them that stuck with me, and those especially that I got exclusively, and through the years I had several copyright stories, and if a paper copyrighted a story, anyone who used any part of the story had to give the writer credit. And during the Republican convention of 68, Reagan and Rockefeller got together and they were tried to stop Nixon on the first ballot. And I got a hold of their papers and then went and interviewed their leaders of this and got and the Tribune copyrighted the story. So Huntley and Brinkley the next morning gave the story quite a bit of coverage. And of course, mentioned my name a couple of times as the reporter. And that's kind of thrilling to do. I got one story I did get from Nixon personally. He had talked the Russians into abandoning plans to build a submarine base in Cuba. And he called me over to the White House and told me that this had happened. And it was kind of a convoluted story in the way the Russians and the Americans were talking to each other through the press briefings at the State Department. And people were rather puzzled by that. But Nixon told me this is the way they were communicating. And so when that came out, everything became much clearer.
Benjamin.
Hi again, Russ. My question, again, you've told me a little bit about it, but I'd like you to share some more with the rest of our friends here tonight. You've had personal relationships with 7 American presidents, I recall you telling me. Can you talk to me about how, as a journalist, you achieve that level of access and that level of respect, and what it really means for your career?
Well, yeah, I started with Truman. I did not reach Washington until 1959. So this was toward the end of the Eisenhower administration. But I accompanied Humphrey to Independence, Missouri, to visit Truman when Humphrey was running for president. He thought that Truman's upset in his own election would kind of boost his campaign, which was off to a horrible start because of Vietnam. So that's how I met Truman. And then Eisenhower, of course, I was the low man on the totem pole in our bureau, but I did get to cover Eisenhower from time to time, and it wasn't as freewheeling as it is today with the White House, and I was really thrilled the first time I walked into the Oval Office. One of the things was that I was disoriented about the location of the White House, and I couldn't figure it out. To me, it was in the wrong location. It was running east and west, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And it finally dawned on me that the main theater in Galesburg, the screen was on the east wall, and whenever the White House came up in newscasts, newsreels, that was the picture I had of the White House, that it was facing, when you looked at it, you were facing east. And so that solved the problem because the White House did not face east. That's an anecdote.
Charlie.
Hello, happy birthday. I hope you're having a great day. Me and my classmates are all from Canada, and I was wondering if you ever got to visit here on a story?
Would someone repeat that question?
Did you ever get to visit Canada on a story?
I did not. But I've been in Canada many times over the years, and a couple of my good friends in Michigan live in Toronto.
If I could jump in, a similar question to Charlie's. You were in the Ninth Army, which was very close to the Canadian and British armies in the north of Germany. Did you interface? Did you run into any Canadian army soldiers during the war?
No, we did not, but the Canadian Army was on our left flank, which would be our northern flank. Um, but I never saw personally a Canadian soldier during the war. As I've told you before, Glenn, all I knew was what was right in front of me.
10 or 20 yards, one way or the other.
Right. Yeah.
Linda and Jim Roberts, hello.
Good evening. Again, like others, happy birthday, Russell. So one of the students asked an interesting question about the protests, which brings to mind, I was in Vietnam in 71 after the war had been dragging on. At that point in time, there were a lot of veterans who were involved in the protest. Did you have any particular feelings as a veteran of World War II about the veterans in the anti-war protest side? Did that affect you in any way?
Yeah, I was with them. I thought the Vietnam War was a horrible war and we should have never been in it. So I was on the side of the protesters, although I never expressed that opinion much. Vietnam War was very different than World War II. And armor Europe was made for armored divisions, was its roads and buildings, and the Americans kept sending more and more armored divisions. And there was one armored division, the 20th Armored Division. I don't know if we had 20 armored divisions in Europe or not, but we certainly had near that. They were just made for Europe.
To
And
your
we
point,
knew that we after the war was over in Europe and we went, we always thought, all of us thought we would eventually end up in the Pacific. There were no armored divisions in the Pacific with the island hopping. They just weren't fit for that.
Warren very helpfully puts in the chat that there were 16 armored divisions in Europe. 16. Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Greg?
Yes, thank you so much, Russ. Happy birthday. I wish you a great happy birthday. Thank you so much for coming on to the program tonight. I also want to thank and appreciate all the youngins, the kids who are on here tonight, the mere 100-year-olds and 101s and 102s. So all those kids who are younger than you, Russ, the World War II vets, I appreciate them coming on. I think it's great to see. I guess I had two questions, but the second one was sort of Vietnam and maybe a different angle, but I'll save that one maybe for a little later. But I seem to remember one time you told a story. I'm pretty sure this was you, that you had gone across France and then you got into Germany. And since you were staying or hiding out or in a lot of houses, you noticed that the French houses were sort of pretty tactile, kinesthetic. You know, the floor, that's where they put their clothes. And even as late as 45, when everything was falling apart, the Germans were really tidy. Was that your story? And is that something that one of those little war anecdotes that you sort of remember in that strange, silly sort of way?
It is my story. I was interested that when we crossed from France into Germany, that they were just absolutely two different lifestyles. The Germans were more like the Dutch, sweeping up off their front porches and so on. The French were a little lax in that regard.
If I can, the Vietnam thing, I appreciate you sharing what you thought of the Vietnam story there. And you had a front row seat in a lot of ways in Vietnam when you were in Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C. and politics is full of BS in a lot of ways, but you sort of could see through what the official stories were, I guess, to a much greater degree than a lot of people. You could see that this what they were saying wasn't really the true story, and I guess you couldn't really print that part of it, but that's you surely had some inside hunch about how things were really going versus how they were being presented. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Johnson fretted and worried over the war. That was obvious in covering the White House. Unfortunately for Johnson, he inherited the war and carried it on. But he had real problems. And when he went on to finally announce he would not run again for the office, his press secretary told me on Saturday, and the speech was going to be on Sunday, that I better be prepared for something unusual. And he told all the reporters that were around, he told them that. So I beefed up our coverage and called in various reporters. And I sent one reporter with the White House correspondent who would cover the speech, sent another reporter to describe the color and what was going on behind the scenes as he made the speech. And of course, at the end, he said he would not run again. And I had two reporters come into the office and start calling people for their reaction to the speech. So we had very good coverage the next morning. And Johnson, get that black,
The silhouette photo?
yeah, get that right there, right here, that black. Right there, you're right at it, under the book. Yes. So the next day after he said he wasn't going to run again, he made a speech in Chicago, and he gave through his White House photographer. He sent this picture over to me. Can you see that?
A little higher,
Raise it up a little bit.
higher. There you go.
There he is reading the Chicago Tribune about the stories that he's not going to run again.
If I could jump in and ask a question that occurred to me, I guess they call that a follow-up question in the biz, huh? Did you know Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein during the Watergate run-up in all their work in exposing that?
Well, I knew Bob Woodward through the years, but I never met Bernstein. Bernstein kind of dropped off as a reporter. Woodward just kept going.
What were you thinking as they were uncovering that in 71 and 72 from your perspective as the managing editor for the Tribune's Washington office?
Well, it was hard to keep up with them. And what was I going to say? Oh, Nixon, when Alex Butterfield told the committee that Nixon had all these White House tapes uh, of his conversations in the Oval Office, he owned those tapes. All he had to do was take them out into the Rose Garden and burn them.
Yeah.
And instead, he gave them over to the committee. And that was his downfall.
Must have been a fascinating time for you to be a journalist in 72, 3, and 4 as Watergate unfolded.
Yeah, it was. Historic occasions.
Nancy.
The most historic journalistic occasion of the 20th century in the States, anyway. Yeah, Nancy.
Hello, Russ. I want to wish you a very, very happy birthday today. And I'm one of Russ's neighbors in the summertime in Michigan. Our cottages are close together. And Russ has given some wonderful talks about his career to the community in the summer where we live. And I didn't get to hear that much about his wartime career until today. So I'm really appreciating all that you've talked about. What he discussed a lot that I do recall was his career as a journalist, very esteemed career. And one thing I remember about his being the Washington bureau chief was how he and other journalists, to get a good story with the Kennedy administration, he would have to jog with Kennedy and keep up with him so he could get an interview at the same time.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty interesting. So he was physically fit during that time, I'm sure. And he still is. But happy birthday again, Russ.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy.
Look forward to seeing you.
Yes, for sure.
Wow, this has been a fascinating evening, Russell. Obviously, hearing your life story is inspiring. Should be inspiring to everybody on the call, particularly these young people. And we want to thank you for sharing it with us. And we really hope that you continue to share it with us in the next few years. You got to beat my mom, Russ. So keep going.
Yeah, I would hope I'd be around for a couple more years, but I'll see. More and more, my movements are in slow motion, and walking and doing certain things.
But the key is your movement. The key is your movement, Russ.
I make my own breakfast and lunch, and I'm amazed when I look at the clock and when I start, and then somehow look at the clock in the stove when I finish, and I'm amazed how long it takes me to make my breakfast and lunch. As I say, it's just in slow motion.
Permit me one last question. What are you reading right now? Do you have a favorite book on your nightstand?
Well, I've just finished a book entitled Trust by Herman Diaz, and it's a book about a financier who builds a big fortune and is accused of being responsible for the crash in 29 because of what he does. And it's one of Obama's favorite books I just read. And I'm reading right now for a book club, Everything is Tuberculosis. And I've just finished a book by Peter Schweitzer called The Invisible Coup. And it's about the infiltration of China into the United States and other people into the United States. And Mexico has his eye on New Mexico and Arizona and California. They want them back, which they lost in the Spanish-American War. No, the Mexican War, not the Spanish-American War.
1848. Yeah.
It's a very interesting book about how China sends women to the United States to give birth to their children, and they're American citizens, and then they take the baby back to China, and she grows up in China, but she's an American citizen.
Wow.
You just had that in the Olympics, where one of the premier Olympians is an American citizen, but she skated for China.
Yeah. Snowboarded for China. The young woman who won the gold medal in ice skating also could have ice skated for China, but chose to stay with the United States.
Yeah.
Chinese try to recruit these people.
Yeah, in both ways.
I'll give you a great read that I'm just about finished with. Erik Larson, his latest book, The Demon of Unrest.
Yeah, I've read that.
Already. He's 103 years old and he's already 2 books ahead of me. I can't stand it.
I'm holding my head in shame here.
I like Erik Larson. I read all his books.
This one's excellent.
Yeah, this one's very good.
Todd, should we say goodnight?
Yeah, thank you all for wishing Russ a happy birthday, and happy birthday, Russ, and thank you for spending your birthday evening with us. What a privilege and a pleasure it's been talking with you these past 90 minutes or so. Good night, everybody. We're back tomorrow night with World War II Open Conversation with Glenn. And take care. Have a good night. And once again, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.